Hi, my name is Caden Desjardins, and I will be doing Chapter 4, Theoretical Explanations for Domestic Violence. So to get started off, I kind of just want to look at the Chapter 4 timeline and order of the concepts that I want to be talking about. So for Concept 1, I will be covering goals and complexities of domestic violence. Then for Concept 2, it's going to be the theories of violence. And then for concept 3, it'll be psychological understandings. And then for concept 4, it'll be family violence. Now, to first start off the chapter, I kind of want to do a little chapter overview and answer the main question that's probably being asked at this moment. And it's what's the focus of this chapter? And I found it directly from the book. On page 97, it says, the primary focus is on testable theories that help us better understand characteristics, behaviors, and relationships that are likely to increase the probability of abuse in a society. I also found on page 98 the focus of how if we focus on the divergent theoretical constructs that may have pragmatic utility in efforts to stop abuse and understanding the victim's victimization, like we can understand more of the correlations that go into it and what can help in those certain scenarios. But basically evaluating the risk factors, the analysis of what drives those risk factors, then finding theories that explain and help to understand the domestic violence accordingly. So next, I want to talk about the complexities of domestic violence. So this isn't a very straightforward answer, but to be honest, domestic violence cases will never be easy. There will always be complexities with domestic violence, which means there will never be an easy answer for why domestic violence occurs. So it's up to the people who at least want to understand to dive deeper and find that why, or find that correlation as to how something goes wrong. So making sure you look at a batterer's turning point. So a batterer would be the abuser, but a batterer's turning point in when they did go violent. And then also looking at the history, whether it's criminal, medical, or family, just anything that can help gather information as to how it got to that point. But honestly, some people just aren't looking in the right place and the answer isn't right in front of our faces. So it's hard to think about those things or go right into them. But when investigating domestic violence causation, you have to find evidence to what got a batterer to that level. It's not giving an excuse to the violence. It's just tracking the behaviors to understand the timeline, to possibly correct them or end generational violence in a family. While discussing the behaviors, it's also good to note that behaviors are similar with people who also commit domestic violence abuse, but it's just what drives each person that may be what drives the behavior. So if they have certain generational traumas or past and present external forces that are weighing on them, it's hard to understand. There's a lot of complexities that go into it. But that's exactly why I put this picture of all this jumbled thread in the slide, is because I feel like it's a mess. And that's what a lot of these domestic violence cases are, is it's a mess because people just aren't looking into it with the motivation to, I guess, help out in every way they can. And that's the point of this picture, is to go knot from knot and just try to make the everything unknotted in a straight line. And usually it's not doable right away or at all, but just acknowledging that bundle of thread in each case, and noticing that there can be stuff that can be done to unravel certain behaviors. Next, I'm going to be talking about theories of violence and batterer typologies. There are usually two typologies, and for the first one we're going to be talking about, it's classifying by severity and frequency of abuse. There are three groups within this typology, and with the first group, it will be labeled as situational violence. Now, usually within this typology, this situational violence is a big majority of the abusers. This basically occurs in sporadic episodes that are occasionally tied to substance abuse, which honestly just also adds on to the impulsivity of the person in the moment. And if I can relate this to my own life, I know I work with kids that live in neglected homes or have a rough home environment. And I work for a respite care facility, and I help out these kids, and I've had to make a decent amount of CPS reports, basically for situational violence, and it's not really looked upon as heavy as you thought, and mainly it's because it's situational. It's not someone being labeled as doing it all the time, so if someone gets investigated, more than once, yeah, they can get in trouble. But after a first time being noticed, because it can happen a ton before it's even noticed, it can be pretty difficult. And I have clients that have come to me and have talked to me about certain situations that they love their parents and they love these things, but in moments where they get frustrated, they get physical, and you can't really, I guess you can't really expect everyone to have an amazing amount of patience, especially if they have kids that require that. But if you aren't able to express yourself with words and you go to physicality with, let's say, your own child, then that would definitely be a big step in the wrong direction. But speaking of a big step in the wrong direction, we have group number 2, the intimate terrorists. This is a pretty intense name, but I guess it makes sense because these batters are a small minority of domestic violence abusers, but pack the most violent punch and tend to be very controlling through manipulation tactics and violent. But what we get out of this second group and the first group is the third group, the violence resistance. And I usually like to call the people in this group defenders, not batterers, because that's what they're doing. They're defending themselves. And usually it's the person who's defending themselves against the abuser. And in most cases with domestic violence, the abused usually is women. So it's a lot of women working in self-defense, and yeah, it can definitely be a small group, but it's still good to see people that are fighting back.